We need to talk about Wicked because part 1 has just come out and it leaves everyone wanting to know what happens next, so let's find out. In this video, I'll break down everything that happens in Wicked, including after the movie ends in the next part. That's not coming out for another year, but in this video you'll find out how everything ties into the original Wizard of Oz and everything that happens next. Will you finally get to meet Dorothy and friends in the sequel? How did the Scarecrow and the Tin Man get created? And what turns Elphaba into the evil witch that you see in the original movie? Before we get started, I want to know what your favourite musical is in a comment because this movie has awakened me into my musical era and I need to watch some more, so please let me know some recommendations in a comment below. If you're new here, I'm MadMorph, I'm a content creator, and this is my movie club where I talk about movies and TV shows that I like, so like and subscribe for more like this. Now, before we get into part 2, we have to talk about what's already happened and quickly recap everything that happens in Wicked Part 1. In case you haven't seen it, I know some people watch this channel just for the recaps for films they haven't even seen yet, or maybe you want to hear my thoughts on my favourite parts of this movie, because then part 2 gets crazy. But if you are just here to find out what happens next, I will put a chapter below that you can click on to go straight there. And if you've never actually read the original book, you can listen to me read it for absolutely free on my podcast Down to Sleep. I have this free audiobook out, it's on Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere you get podcasts, and every week I read books and bedtime stories to help you get down to sleep. Find me in all of the links that you need below this video. And now let's begin Wicked Explained. The movie opens with a witch's hat simmering in a puddle of water, referencing not only how we know that the Wicked Witch of the West meets her end in the original Wizard of Oz movie, but it's also a reference to how the original Broadway show opened with a giant hat on the stage. The opening of the movie takes place after Dorothy has melted the witch in the original movie. We see the flying monkeys bursting out of the witch's castle, flying over the landscape, and a hidden figure on horseback rides away. We even get a peek at Dorothy and her gang making their way back down the yellow brick road to Oz. Everyone in Oz is celebrating because Ding Dong the Wicked Witch is dead, and Glinda comes down in a bubble dug and she talks to the Ozians. She asks the question, are people born wicked or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? Cue our first flashback, meeting the Wicked Witch's parents before she is born. Her father is the governor of Munchkinland, but whilst he is away, the wife likes to play and she sneaks a man in and they drink and get busy. So her dad isn't her real dad, but she comes out green and with special powers. Her father, the governor, rejects her and she is raised by her nanny who is literally a talking bear. And this baby is one of our main characters, Elphaba, who would become the Wicked Witch of the West, and she has a sister in a wheelchair who the father absolutely dotes on, but Elfie remains neglected and overlooked. Meanwhile, back in the future, the celebrations, Glinda is asked if it's true that she was the witch's friend. The rest of the movie plays out in a flashback of their time at school together. A young Glinda, here called Galinda, arrives at Shiz, and she meets Bok, who immediately falls in love with her, but she seems kind of uninterested. A grown-up Elphaba also shows up and is there to see her sister off, and everyone is so shocked at how green she is. Her sister, the one in the wheelchair, is gifted silver shoes by her father. The shoes are actually the red ruby slippers that Dorothy wears in the original movie, but they aren't allowed to be red in the movie or in the play because MGM has the copyright to red ruby slippers. The original book is actually in the public domain, which means anyone can do anything with it or record it like I have with my own audiobook version of it, but the stuff that was created for the movie is completely under copyright. Not that it matters too much because actually in the original book the shoes are crystal, they are not red. They were made red because the studio was obsessed with the pop of colour against the yellow because it was filmed in Technicolor. Galinda and Elphaba meet, and it's a little awkward. Basically, Galinda is the popular girl type, all smiles, a little bit fake, and she has this mean girl side, whilst Elphaba is the outcast, even within her own family due to her green skin. Elphaba gets frustrated when one of the staff pushes her sister's wheelchair despite her saying that she wants to do it for herself, and that reveals her magical powers when she gets angry. This brings her to the attention of Madame Morrible, the school's Dean of Sorcery Studies. She says that she did the magic to cover for Elfie and insists that Elfie joins the school and studies under her. She ends up being roommates with Galinda. So basically, Elphaba wasn't supposed to go to this shiz school. She was just dropping her sister off with her father, but because she exposed her powers, she's kind of been recruited. They're like, you're so special, you've got to come and be here and learn from me. Glinda herself is desperate to study under Madame Morrible and learn sorcery, but Morrible is completely uninterested and kind of pies her off. And Morrible's going to write to the Wizard of Oz and let him know how special Elfie is, which leads to Elfie singing a song about her wish to meet the wizard to get her heart's desire from him. Just like in the original Wizard of Oz, people think if you meet the wonderful wizard that you can ask for your heart's desire. The Tin Man wants to see him to get a heart, the Scarecrow wants to see him to get a brain, the Lion for courage, and Elphaba is hoping that he'll de-greenify her so she can be a normal color and have a normal life. In class, we meet a talking goat called Dr. Dillamond, voiced by Peter Dinklage, because a huge part of this world is talking animals. But this talking goat can't pronounce Glinda properly and keeps saying Glinda. We find out from Dr. Dillamond that talking animals have been a big part of life in Oz as teachers, poets, and just generally part of society. But when there was a drought, that led to them being blamed by the humans and being persecuted. Elphaba caring for animals is a big part of her personality and a driving motive for this character. And it's not just because she's good-hearted or just because she loves animals and wants to stand up for what's right, but also remember that she was quite literally raised by a talking bear. Probably the closest thing she had to parental love and attention as a child was with talking animals. She stumbles upon a secret meeting of the talking animals where they're talking about protests, how animals are going missing and that they're being persecuted, and slowly losing the ability to talk. And this gives Elphaba the idea that she needs to tell the wizard about it so that he can help the animals. And on the way back from that meeting, she bumps into, quite literally, Prince Fiyero, who is a little bit taken with her. The next day, he arrives as the new transfer in school, and everyone's just so in love with him, including Glinda. He's your roguish, naughty, bad boy type with a heart of gold. It's a lot of bravado, but there is a little bit more depth to him. He sings a song about dancing through life and being thoughtless, to enjoy yourself without trying or caring too much and trying to impress everyone. But he's actually incredibly important to the story and ties into the original film. Yep, he's one of the main characters. He wants to know what there is to do around here and suggests they go to Ozdust, which is a club in town. Up pops Bock, who is in love with Glinda, of course, and asks her to save a dance for him. She's like, yeah, no, but you know what would really impress me would be to bring that girl that's in the wheelchair. That would be really heroic, whoever did that. It's Glinda manipulating Bock into inviting Nessa to go to the club with him so that he kind of gets off of her back and she can focus on Fiyero. But with a lot of what Glinda does, it's seen as a good thing, and Nessa is just so grateful to her because Bock says he was emboldened by Glinda to ask her, and this gets back to Elphaba, who is kind of happy that someone's done a good thing for her sister. Now we're back in the dorm room with Glinda and her friends, and they're kind of horrified and disgusted by this black witch's hat that Glinda has, and she says, I know, my granny made it, and they decide to give it to Elfie as a joke. So Glinda invites her to go to this club, the Ozdust, with them, and tells her to wear the hat. Elfie thinks she's being nice, but she's actually being set up here, and we have the story of how the witch gets her black hat. Elphaba, though, has taken it to heart, and she goes to Madame Morrible to ask her for a favour. We find out shortly after that she's asking her to teach Glinda sorcery as well, because it's her dream too. It's Elphaba's way of repaying Glinda for being nice to her sister and for the gift of the hat and including her. So now we go to the Ozdust, which is one of the best scenes in the entire movie. Bock thinks about confessing that he doesn't actually really fancy Nessa and he just invited her here because Glinda said so, but then he sees Glinda kissing Fiyero and he's like, oh, never mind, you're actually really beautiful, Nessa, and just gaslights this girl to the moon and dances with her. Madame Morrible shows up and she gives Glinda a training wand, and she reveals that the only reason she's doing it is because Elphaba threatened to leave school if she didn't. All of this makes what happens next doubly heartbreaking. Elphaba shows up to the Ozdust wearing that hideous hat and walks to the center of a now silent room. It is a needle scratch moment. The music has stopped, everyone is standing around and all eyes are on her as they laugh at her, point at her and make comments. She walks to the dance floor, takes off the hat, puts it down in front of her, and everyone has formed a circle around her. She kind of just looks around for a beat and then she starts to dance. It's this real moment just played out in complete silence on her face that is like, okay, I should have expected this. I'm on my own again and I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to be me and I'm going to express myself here and try to enjoy myself despite this situation that I am now in. Like I'm still going to do it. So she starts to dance, and it's this very strange dance. It's her own weird type of self-expression, and it is done to complete silence, like pin drop silence. It's clear that she doesn't really know how to dance, or at least not like everyone else in this room. They continue to laugh and just be shocked by what they're seeing unfold in front of them. It's like the weird kid in school being an outcast and being called cringe, and they're just so socially awkward. But Elphaba keeps going. The girl who probably has had nobody to dance with growing up her entire life, who has never been included in anything, and this is the first party she's ever gone to. If she ever did dance, it was probably with her bare nanny, or just moves that she made up on her own in her room as a neglected child. She keeps going, and it is simultaneously the actions of someone who doesn't fit in and wants to look like they don't care and is going to do their own thing despite what everyone else thinks and says about them, but is also, you can see the desperation for her to be accepted in this moment. It's at this point that Glinda steps forward into the circle and she starts to copy the moves that Elphaba did in order to dance with her. And it's not in a mocking way, it's because she feels bad and she wants to include her. And her friends tell her stop and she says no. Elphaba is watching her, standing still to this point and not dancing back with her, unsure of what this previously mean girl is trying to do, completely not trusting her yet. But then she starts to dance with her. They slowly mirror each other's moves in complete silence, whilst Elphaba starts to cry. She's overcome with the emotions of being included for the very first time in her entire life. For me, this is one of the two emotional peaks in this movie which make most people cry who watch it. What's even more stunning is that this is kind of a very special scene for the movie. Like, this does happen in the Broadway show, but it's very quick and kind of played more for laughs, like, haha, she's kind of, isn't that dancing funny that she's doing? So this whole deep emotional impact that we get from it in the film is just for the movie version. Glinda has included her, and by them doing it together, it made these dance moves no longer weird, but now cool, and everybody starts to do it. It's a scene that has so much to say. It's deeply layered. It's a really beautiful scene, and you can take from it whatever you want. A lot of it is about inclusion, and it is really an interesting commentary on how things are sometimes seen as cringe or weird at first, and people are ostracized and pushed out, but then cool people, or the masses, start to do it, and it becomes normalized and accepted, like lots of great art, fads, and trends. And in the context of the story, it is the powerful and defining moment that solidifies Glinda and Elphaba as best friends. They get to know each other better, and it's mentioned in the next scene in their room about a green bottle that Elphaba keeps under her pillow, saying it was her mother's. We also find out that her father was so scared of the next baby being green that he made her mother eat milk flowers during pregnancy, which resulted in Nessa coming too early, and is why her legs don't work, and why her mother passed away during childbirth. Back in class, Dr. Dillamond, the talking goat, is taken away by police for speaking out on animal issues, and their new professor shows up with a lion cub in a cage. Can you guess where that one's going? He says if animals are kept in cages early, they will never learn to speak, and that is what they want to do. This angers Elphaba, who in her anger casts a spell with poppies, which sends everyone in the room to sleep except for her and Fiyero. Fiyero takes this opportunity to save the lion cub from the cage, and they run away to set it loose in the forest, and they bond. They've basically got the hots for each other, but Elphaba doesn't feel like she's that girl, you know? A letter from the wizard arrives inviting Elphaba to visit him, and she leaves on a train to the Emerald City. This is also the moment where Glinda changes her name in an attempt to look good in front of Fiyero. Glinda basically thinks that Fiyero is all cut up about the talking goat being taken, but actually he's just secretly in love with Elphaba. So she tries to honor the talking goat by changing her name from Glinda to Glinda, the way that Dr. Dillamond couldn't say her name, so now she's known as Glinda. Elfie invites her to go with her, and she jumps on the train and they go to the city together to meet the wizard. The performance that takes place in the streets of the Emerald City features the original performers for Glinda and Elphaba, that is, Kristen Chenoweth and the wickedly talented Adele Dazeem, by which I mean Idina Menzel. They go to meet the wizard, and the monkeys from the movies are there as his guards, but they don't have their wings yet. He does his whole "I am the mighty and powerful Oz" with a giant puppeted animatronic head, but when Elphaba introduces herself, the true wizard comes out from behind the scary illusion and introduces himself as Jeff Goldblum. As we know from the original, he's really just a man, not a powerful wizard at all, but he knows how to put on a show and do some tricks and convince and gaslight the Land of Oz into thinking he's this wonderful wizard. This is never more evident than him doing a magic trick by pulling a coin from behind Elphaba's ear. Like, that's the best you can do, but the Munchkins probably go wild for it. We get a scene of them deciding the color of the yellow brick road as they plan the future building work for the city, and Elphaba reveals that her heart's desire is no longer to change her skin color, but for the wizard to help the animals. He agrees and sings about being a sentimental man who wants to be a parent. At which point MadMorph shows up, and the Grimoire is revealed to Elphaba, which is a book of spells in a secret language. Fun fact, in the lore of this world from the book, this book of spells is actually brought to Oz by the wizard Merlin from legend. It's time for Elphaba to prove herself by using the book of spells, and the wizard notes casually how the monkey chief of his guards always watches the birds fly with longing. Elphaba can read the book perfectly and is able to cast a spell to try and help the monkey live out his dreams of being a bird. This sprouts wings out of the monkey's back, and it looks very painful. Much to Elphaba's dismay, she discovers that it's happened to every single monkey there, and she just caused a lot of animals a lot of pain, and she asks how to reverse the spell, but Morrible says a spell from the Grimoire can never be reversed. At this point, the wizard and Morrible reveal too much by saying what great spies the monkeys will be now that they can fly, which tips Elphaba to their true intent. Furthermore, the monkey probably doesn't watch the birds longingly. The wizard was just manipulating her into casting that spell. They plan to use the monkeys to spy on the animals and report back to them, and that the wizard and MadMorph are the ones turning Oz against the animals, because the best way to bring folks together is to give them a real good enemy. The wizard wants Elphaba to join him. It's a real join me and we can rule the galaxy together moment, saying you and your friend can live here, but Elphie says no and she runs away with the book. The winged monkeys are sent after her, as well as the human guards. Glinda and Elphaba try to leave in the wizard's balloon that he arrived to Oz in, but the roof shuts on them and traps them. Meanwhile, Morrible gives an announcement to Oz which labels Elphaba as the Wicked Witch and an enemy of the people. She says that her green skin is just an outward manifestation of her twisted nature. She demonizes her to the people with propaganda as the next really good enemy to unite the people of Oz and to keep them under the control of her and the wizard. Glinda tells Elphaba don't be afraid, and Elphie says I'm not afraid, it's the wizard who should be afraid of me. Glinda is trying to convince her to apologize and to just come back and everything can be fine, and it leads to the most well-known song from the show, Defying Gravity. An empowering number about not accepting limits or being pulled down. Elphaba casts a spell which results in her getting a magical witch's broom come to her, and Elphie asks Glinda to come with, and it's at that moment that the girls realize they are now on different paths to one another, and that she won't be going with her. Talking about this scene, Ariana said, "It feels how it feels in real life when you love someone, but the paths that you need to take for your own truth and life are different. You can't actually continue growing together, you're growing apart, and you can still love that person so much and acknowledge that that's going to be best for them. I want you to go there, but I can't join you." She said it's not about Glinda not being strong enough to go, it's about her being strong enough to not go, to know that her place and her path is to stay behind in Oz. So Elphaba grips her broom and gets ready to take flight. The human guards show up and they grab Glinda and they try to grab Elphie. She jumps through the window and is falling from the tower down the side of this skyscraper-sized building. She's momentarily unable to fly, hearing the voices that have doubted her all her life, seeing the reflection of her child's self as she falls reflected off of the building. She reaches out to take the hand of her child's self and finds herself grabbing the broom, which allows her to fly back up to the roof and sing the rest of Defying Gravity. We see a compilation of people reacting to the news of the Wicked Witch being an enemy. Bok has a little smirk, Fiyero looks shocked, her sister Nessa is worried, and the father, the governor, falls over holding his chest in the background. Meanwhile, Elphaba sings, hitting the kind of peak of the song, which causes a massive blackout, a power cut in the Land of Oz. A symbol of her power that will no doubt be used in propaganda against her. That wicked witch who cast a spell and caused this massive power cut in the Emerald City. She flies away as the music is just this insane crescendo and climax that makes you cry, and boom, the movie ends and it says to be continued. The part 2 to Wicked will be dropping in November 2025 if there's no delays, but if you don't want to wait to find out what happens, I'm now going to break it all down for you. Things start to get wild. Honestly, it's like the first part of a roller coaster was part 1, and then you're at that bit at the top where just the drop happens, and then the pace and how quickly stuff happens gets absolutely crazy. But first, now is a great time if you're new here to hit that like and subscribe. Do that now to get more videos like this one. So what happens in part 2 of Wicked after the first movie ends? This is everything that happens in the stage play after that point. Act 2 opens with a kind of press conference with Glinda, Fiyero, and Madame Morrible, who is now the press secretary, and they are giving a speech to the Ozians. Fiyero is the captain of the guard, and he reveals that he became a guard to try to find Elphaba, but before he can talk anymore and defend her as not wicked, it's revealed that this press conference is announcing his engagement to Glinda, much to his surprise. She's like, yep, we're engaged now, and we're gonna get married. The mob all around them are repeating rumors that they've heard about the Wicked Witch, including about talking animals giving her shelter and feeding her, and that water will melt her, which prompts Fiyero to leave, saying, water will melt her? People are so empty-headed they'll believe anything, and he starts to walk off. Glinda follows him and they get into it a little bit because Fiyero says, I can't stand here and listen to them talk about her like that. Glinda says, well, how do you think I feel? And Fiyero isn't fully convinced. He's a little bit like, it seems like you found it quite hard to resist all of this newfound fame and attention. In the next scene, Elphaba has snuck into her sister's house to visit her. She wants Nessa to tell their father to have Elphaba's back because he'll do it for her, and he's the governor of Munchkinland, so he might be able to change people's minds and protect her. It's at this point that Nessa reveals that their father actually died when the news broke of Elphaba being the Wicked Witch, and that since then she has become the governess of Munchkinland. Elfie casts a spell on the shoes that Nessa was gifted at the start of Act 1, those not-so-ruby red slippers, and her sister is able to walk for the first time. It's unknown if this will remain in the movie version. Some people have an issue with this fixing a disability trope in today's world, and it's coming up a lot in conversation about it. It's a fairly important plot point though, so it's going to be interesting to see if they do try and change it. Excited by being able to walk, Nessa calls for Bok. He now lives here as her sort of live-in manservant and forced boyfriend. She's become the crazy girlfriend and an evil governess. Bok shouts at Elphaba saying, your sister is just as wicked as you are, that the sister has been stripping the Munchkins of their rights and forcing him to be with her. But when Bok sees that Nessa can now walk, he changes his tune. He says, well, that's great, now you don't need me to be here to help you, and I can leave and go and confess my love to Glinda. This upsets Nessa, who grabs Elphaba's spellbook and tries to cast a spell on Bok to make him stay. But since she can't read the book properly, her spell makes his heart shrink, so Elphaba has to now cast a new spell on him to save his life. And as a result of this, Bok is revealed to have become the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz. Her spell to save his life turned him into the character that we know from the first book and movie, and horrified at himself, he runs away. Elphaba goes to the wizard's lair to try and find a way to clear her name. The wizard finds her and they talk as he tries one last time to recruit her. Elphaba says she doesn't want to hurt anyone, but she's starting to get angry and she won't be responsible for what happens if she does. It's a bit of a real heart-to-heart moment as the wizard says, I know you'd never hurt anyone, you love Oz too much, and she says there's no place like home. He says, you've been so strong through all of this, don't you want someone to finally take care of you? Let me take care of you. This goes back to his song about being a sentimental man, where he sang about wanting to be a parent, and because he isn't one, he treats all of Oz like sons and daughters. He says, let's start over. But Elphaba isn't convinced. She says, how? I believed in you, in some magic father who would drop down from the sky and make everything all better. No one believed in you more than me. But she agrees. They can start over on one condition. He sets all of the monkeys free, and he does. I'm going to assume this is why the winged monkeys are loyal to the Wicked Witch in the sort of movies in the book, because she's the one who got them their freedom. So all the monkeys leave, but there is one animal left behind, hidden under a blanket, and Elphaba pulls it off to reveal that it's Professor Dillamond, the goat from Act 1, but he can no longer speak. He's been held here and kept in a cage until he can't talk anymore, so he can't spread any more of his animal revolution. This makes Elphaba angry, and she says she'll fight the wizard until the day she dies. The deal's off. Oz calls his guards, and who shows up but Fiyero, the captain of the guards, and he sends the other guards to go and get water. Fiyero holds the wizard at gunpoint though, and Glinda shows up. Fiyero reveals that he wants to leave with Elphaba, and Glinda works out that all this time Herman and Elphaba have actually had the hots for each other, and then they leave. The wizard offers Glinda a drink to numb the pain, but she says no thank you. Madame Morrible shows up, and they're trying to come up with a way to get the Wicked Witch, and Glinda says, use her sister. Make her think her sister is in trouble, and she'll show up, and we can grab her. This is a massive betrayal from Glinda, and I think it's going to be really important that they show that it comes hot on the heels of Fiyero literally leaving her for Elphaba and her feeling betrayed, because this is a big one. People are going to be mad that she does this. There's then a scene where Elphaba and Fiyero get all lovey-dovey and confess how they feel to each other, but suddenly Elfie has this sense that her sister is in danger and has a vision, or literally sees a house flying through the sky. It's Dorothy's house in the tornado from the start of The Wizard of Oz. She runs to go and see her sister and see if she's okay. We cut to Glinda, who is at the site of Dorothy's crashed house, which has landed in Oz, and landed on a Wicked Witch. If you remember that, the sort of the boots sticking out from under the house in Wizard of Oz, that is Elphaba's sister, Nessa, the Wicked Witch of the East. They started to call her a Wicked Witch after her treatment of the Munchkins once she became the governess. Elphaba is there, and she's mad that Glinda gave the shoes off of her dead sister's feet away to Dorothy. When you think about it, it's actually kind of insane that Glinda did that. But the real truth and tragedy of this scene is that it wasn't an accident that brought Dorothy here and dropped that house on Nessa. We know from Act 1 that Madame Morrible specializes in the weather in terms of her sorcery, and it was Glinda saying use her sister that gave her the idea to conjure something up and drop a house on her. Rather than just put the sister in danger to draw Elphaba out, she just thought, I'll drop a house on her head and then she'll have to come and mourn her. Elphaba and Glinda have an argument and slap each other over who Fiyero likes best, and this scene is hilarious. I can't wait to see it in the movie. When the guards show up and get ready to arrest Elphaba, but as they grab her, Fiyero swings into the scene and says, let the green girl go. He points his gun at Glinda, saying if they don't let Elphaba go, he will hurt her. A very clear indication that he has made his choice and chosen his girl. He tells Elphaba to run, and she does, but now the guards grab Fiyero, stringing him up on a pole like a scarecrow and taking him out to a cornfield. They're going to keep him there until he talks. And yes, you see where this is going, because Elphaba conjures a spell with the intention of making it so Fiyero can't be harmed or die. But what it results in, like a finger curling on a monkey's paw, is that he turns into a scarecrow. Actually, the scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz. Back in Oz, the mob is forming, and the Tin Man says that he has a personal score to settle with the witch. He blames her for the spell that made him into a Tin Man, and says, and I'm not the only one. He then tries to introduce the Cowardly Lion, who refuses to come on stage. The Tin Man says that the witch cubnapped the lion when he was a baby and left him alone in the forest, and that's why he's scared of everything, revealing that the lion cub that Elphaba and Fiyero saved in history class grows up to be the Cowardly Lion. So now you have all of your main characters introduced. You have the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, the Cowardly Lion, and Dorothy is on the scene. Elphaba is hanging out in an empty castle that belongs to Fiyero's family, and she shouts off stage at Dorothy saying, if you ever want to see your Aunt Em and Uncle what's-his-name again, then get those shoes off your feet. She's holding Dorothy hostage to try to get the red slippers, or the crystal slippers in this case. And then Glinda walks in to try to convince Elphaba to let the girl go and to give herself up. And if you're starting to think this sounds like a lot is happening very, very quickly, you would be right. It's only an hour when it's on the stage, this second act, and I'm sure they're going to sort of drag it out and have more transitional scenes in the movie to make it 2 hours, 2.5 hours. But on the stage, it all just happens at a breakneck speed. Glinda says, you are out of control. They're just shoes. Let it go. It's a line delivery that I actually can't wait to see Ariana do because it's going to be hilarious. And at this point, Elphaba gets a note that it's about Fiyero, and she says we'll never see his face again. She gives the Grimoire spellbook to Glinda and says it's up to you now, and tells her to leave with it and that she's going to surrender. They embrace for one last time, and Glinda goes to leave. At this point, the witch is attacked by Dorothy and her friends. We see Dorothy throw the bucket of water over Elphaba as she melts away and dies. But in the stage show, you don't see it happening. It's done with a sort of silhouette through a curtain. You never actually see someone playing Dorothy. She's just sort of a shadow behind a screen. The curtain then pulls back, and there it is, the simmering hat in a puddle of water, and a flying monkey offers Glinda a drink, who has witnessed the whole thing. But Glinda barely has time to mourn as she's thrust into the next scene where she confronts the wizard using the green bottle. Remember the one that Elphaba had under her pillow that was also a green bottle that belonged to her mother? It's revealed that the wizard is Elphaba's father, that he was the man that had an affair with her mother, who showed up to drink and party and get busy and breed with her, and now doesn't realize that he has a daughter. All this time he had pined for a child, not knowing that he had one right in front of him. He turned the entire country against his only child and caused her tragic passing. It's also implied that the drinking of this green bottle liquid might be why she came out green, leading Morrible to declare that's why Elphaba is so powerful. She was a child of both worlds, of the wizard who blew to Oz from our real world, much like how Dorothy arrived in her house on the wind, and of Elphaba's mother, who is from Oz. It makes me wonder if Morrible controlling the weather and did so to bring the wizard here like she did to Dorothy's house, or if she's behind the droughts that have plagued Oz and been the cause of the dissension against the animals. She seems to be the puppet master, whilst the wizard is just this weak, needy human man with no powers. Glinda commands that the wizard leaves Oz, and she orders the guards to arrest Madame Morrible. Glinda the Good has freed Oz of their control. It all happens just as quickly as that in the show, and I'm sure they'll make it a lot more dramatic in the movie. The Scarecrow arrives to the site of the Wicked Witch's death and where her hat is still on the floor. He gets down on his knees and he bangs the floor, saying it worked, and Elphaba emerges from under a trapdoor, revealing that she has faked her death and she is still very much alive. She sees Fiyero as the Scarecrow for the first time and what her spell did to him. He says, "You did the best you could. You saved my life." She says, "You're so beautiful." He says, "You don't have to lie to me." She says, "It's not lying, it's looking at things another way." The exact same thing that he said to her about her green skin. Neither of them care what the other looks like, her being green, him being a scarecrow, they just love each other. Glinda then gives a speech and says she wants to try to help people of Oz, and that she wants to try to be Glinda the Good, getting her new name. Fiyero and Elphaba are hand in hand, and Elphaba says, "We can never come back to Oz, can we?" Fiyero says no. And also that Glinda can't know they are alive. Nobody can ever know if they want to be safe. The closing song is Glinda singing the words, "Who can say if I've been changed for the better, but," as Elphaba and Glinda sing together, "Because I knew you, I have been changed." As the Ozian people all sing, "No one mourns the wicked," and the show ends. And that is Wicked Part 1 and 2 explained in full. Now, if you have any more questions, do drop them in a comment below, because this is a movie club. We're here to talk about it, and I'm sure there are some fans of Wicked who will be able to answer your questions in a comment. I'm now going to tell you my review of the movie, because I really enjoyed it a lot. Like, I was very, very taken with it. So let's talk about that. But if you're just here for the explanation, please do hit like and subscribe before you leave for more videos like this. There are plenty more videos on the channel. And now here is my review of Wicked Part 1. I went into this movie with insanely low expectations. I hadn't seen Wicked, even though I was familiar with it. I hadn't read the Wicked book. All I had done is read The Wizard of Oz, the original book, a couple of years ago for my podcast, and I really enjoyed it. So I went in not a fan and not really expecting much, and I was absolutely blown away. I was stunned by how good it was. My true unbiased take is that I think they've created a classic movie that will stand the test of time, just as the live show has. Everyone in it was great. Ariana's comedic timing, her inflections, and the performance are just fully deserving of what I think is a guaranteed Oscar nom, and maybe they'll even give it to her. That would be crazy and probably deserved, I think. Cynthia made me cry as much as they did on the press tour because she emotes with such a delicate power that this outcast character demands and needs. It was impossible not to feel for her and love her journey. They both entirely eclipse anybody else who appears in the movie, and rightfully so, but I think the rest of the ensemble did do a great job. But overall, as a guy that often says he doesn't like musicals, I just absolutely fell in love with it and realized that maybe I do really like musicals because I rushed home and watched loads of bootlegs and stuff. And that's why I would love you to leave me a comment recommending me some musicals to watch, because there are a ton that I haven't seen. I grew up liking them, and I've just gone through this big phase of being like, I don't like musicals because I don't think they've been very good for a while. I think the last one that I liked was maybe Chicago, which is going back 15 years, but I grew up enjoying them and I liked West Side Story a lot growing up. So let me know some that I need to catch up on in a comment below. And that's going to do it for this one. There are some more videos on the screen if you want to get another recap with me right now, or do go check out my gaming channel, my podcast, or just come hang out with me on Instagram. All of my links are below this video. Until next time, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Good night.